The video shows a big truck with U.S. New York-Fuzhou Police Overseas Service Station written on it, openly participating in a parade in New York in October 2022. The Changle Guild of America at 107 East Broadway, number 3A in Manhattan, New York, was the location of this police station.
Overseas Chinese of Fuzhou region, you can dial through the cell phone and the telephone using this number 0086 59 11 10. The dedicated operator of the Overseas 110 police station will immediately handle your case during the intake and registration. Overseas Chinese from Fuzhou who are currently living abroad can apply for driver's license replacement online. Attached at the end are the addresses and telephone numbers of our offices in 30 countries.
This was a promotional video from the Fuzhou Police Bureau in China on January 10, 2022. It shows that the Fuzhou Police Bureau is the first in China to open the 110 Overseas Police Station, and it publicized the addresses and phone numbers of the police stations in 30 countries around the world. It's no secret that the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, has been setting up overseas police stations for many years, also known as Overseas Chinese Service Centers. But it's only since 2022 that various countries started to pay attention to these centers and take action. It all started when the Spanish-based Safeguard Defenders released a report on September 12, 2022, titled, Overseas 110, the CCP's transnational policing gets out of control. It points out that the CCP has been setting up overseas police stations on 5 continents since 2018, and that it's already set up 54 overseas police stations in 21 countries, most of which are in Europe, while 1 is in the US in New York City and 3 in Canada's Toronto. On December 5th of the same year, Safeguard Defenders released an update saying that the number of countries in which the CCP had set up police stations rose to 53, and the number of stations to 102. Most of these police stations were low-key and secretive, set up in Chinese restaurants, convenience stores, or the offices of Chinese business associations. On the surface, the police stations pretend to assist overseas Chinese people in applying for extended Chinese driver's licenses and identity cards, but in reality, they work with the CCP police to extend the CCP's jurisdiction overseas, hunting down Chinese nationals across borders and persecuting dissidents. After the release of the Safeguard Defenders report, it raised widespread alarm in Western countries in a very short period, and many governments immediately launched investigations. In an unprecedented move, the U.S. Department of Justice announced the arrests of members of the CCP Overseas Secret Police on April 17, 2023, including Liu Jianwang, 61, a Chinese-American New York resident and former president of the Changle Guild of America, and Cheng Jinping, 59, its Secretary General. Both were arrested at their homes on suspicion of conspiracy to act as an agent of the Chinese government and obstruction of justice. They face up to 25 years in prison if convicted on both charges. The Justice Department also indicted 44 Chinese cyber police.
To me, it is outrageous to think that the Chinese police would attempt to set up shop, in New York, let's say, without. And the reason this is so important is because we have seen a clear pattern of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, exporting their repression right here into the U.S.
After arresting the 2 members, U.S. Attorney Breon Peace in Brooklyn, New York said, "These charges are a clear response to China. We're looking at you, we know what you're doing, and we're going to stop this from happening in the U.S. Our great city does not need or want any secret police department." The headquarters of the Changle Guild of America was located in a modest office building in Manhattan's Chinatown. The building has a noodle shop on the first floor, a tax company on the second floor, an acupuncturist on the third floor, and Changle's clubhouse on the fourth floor. Most of the time, Chinese seniors play mahjong in the main conference room next to the 5-star red flag of the CCP. Changle is a coastal area in Fuzhou City, Fujian Province, China, with a large immigrant population. In 2013, the Changle Guild of America was officially registered in New York City as a nonprofit charitable organization, with the purpose of providing a social gathering place for immigrants of Fujian Province. But the U.S. Department of Justice accuses the Changle Guild of not being simply a meeting place, but of harboring an overseas secret police station operated with the support of the Chinese government. It intimidates and spies on dissidents in the U.S. and helps track down critics of the CCP living in the U.S. In 2022, the Changle Guild officially opened an overseas branch of the Chinese Police Department inside the clubhouse. The criminal indictment includes a photo of Chen Jingping, Lu Jianwang, and other members of the Changle Guild wearing uniform red scarves sitting in front of a banner that reads, Fuzhou Police Overseas Service Station, New York, USA. U.S. Department of Justice investigators also noted that Lu Jianwang met officials from the Fuzhou Municipal Police Bureau through a United Front Work Department official during a visit to China. They discussed the establishment of an overseas police service station. In January 2022, Lu was in Fuzhou City for the grand launch of the Fuzhou Overseas Police Service Station. On February 13, 2022, 2 days after Lu returned to New York, the Changle Guild held the opening ceremony for the first Fuzhou Overseas Police Station in the U.S. Lu Jianwang also admitted to investigators that he organized a trip to Washington, D.C. during Xi's visit to the U.S. in 2015 to confront anti-Xi protesters in Washington. They harassed Falun Gong practitioners' peaceful petition activities and covered up their banners with flags. He said that the participating Chinese could get US $60 cash from the Chinese consulate. After the event, Lu received a plaque from China's Ministry of Public Security. Visa documents show that the CCP official who presented Lu with the Certificate of Honor at the ceremony was a deputy director of the Ministry of Public Security at the time. Lu also contacted one of China's most wanted fugitives in the U.S. to persuade him to return to China to stand trial and assisted the Chinese police in researching family data on pro-democracy dissidents in California. Another person arrested was Chen Jinping, the Secretary General of the Changle Guild. He admitted to the FBI that he maintained contact with Chinese police and helped run the police station. According to the indictment, he also confirmed that the police station was operated under the direction of the Fuzhou Police Bureau, an agency of the Chinese Ministry of Public Security. During questioning, Chen admitted to the U.S. attorney that he realized that helping to collect personal information in the U.S. and handing it over to Chinese authorities was probably not a good idea. The activities of the Changle Guild had actually been on the radar of the U.S. government for several years. The FBI had already investigated its activities in October 2016. At that investigation, according to the FBI, Lu Jianwang and Chen Jinping admitted to deleting a large amount of communications on their cell phones, including direct instructions from a Chinese police official in order to avoid leaks. The fate of Lu Jianwang and Chen Jingping has actually proved one thing. That is, in the US, in the whole world, for all the evils that you have done, for all the bad things that you have done, you are working for a totalitarian dictatorship, a very evil regime. What good can you do? Isn't it clear what will happen to you in the end? Most of these people who work for the CCP don't have any real ideals, including the CCP officials, the CCP police, and state security. They actually don't have any political ideals. The CCP doesn't have any political ideals anymore. They don't believe in Marxism or communism. They don't even believe in that. The only thing that they believe in now is what? What do they believe in now? Interests. In fact, the whole world knows how shameless the CCP's foreign ministry is. They often tell lies with their eyes closed, and they will tell lies in the face of the facts. So the CCP claims that the US smears China, but it's just the opposite. Those arrested by the US are only a small number, just 2 people. In fact, the CCP has set up an army of Trojan horses in this matter. You can see that in the whole US, from the top to the bottom, as long as there are Chinese people, there are Chinese associations under the influence of the CCP. Why do overseas Chinese organizations that help immigrants become police stations that assist the CCP in its overseas surveillance? Radio Free Asia reported on July 7, 2023 that the prototype of overseas Chinese communities and overseas Chinese organizations established around the world can be traced back to the early 19th century. Over the decades, most of these organizations have existed to connect their fellow countrymen overseas, help each other, and work together to deal with the problems they face in a foreign land. Since the 1980s, these overseas groups began to change. The then party leader Deng Xiaoping commented that having overseas relations is a good thing. Overseas relations means having family members overseas. It used to be dangerous for someone to have such a connection, as one could be suspected of being a spy. But the party leader's comment changed everything, leading to waves of Chinese immigration and studying abroad and the growth of overseas Chinese associations, more than 25,000 globally by 2016. In recent years, overseas Chinese associations have begun to take on a more political flavor. Places at which immigrants gather to make dumplings, drink tea, and chat have transformed into hosting receptions for Chinese provincial, municipal, and township governments to attract foreign investment. At these events, it isn't uncommon to see officials from the United Front Work Department, or UFWD. The UFWD is the department responsible for conducting activities to exert the CCP's influence at home and abroad. Mao Zedong once regarded the United Front as one of the CCP's magic weapons for defeating its enemies. Revitalizing the United Front has been a key ambition of Xi Jinping since he took over as leader in 2012. Xi has placed overseas Chinese affairs under the United Front Work Department. In his thinking, overseas Chinese, regardless of which passport they hold, will play an irreplaceable role in China's rise to world power. Today, more and more overseas Chinese associations are being incorporated into the United Front Workers Organization, either by organizing study groups on Xi Jinping thought or by speaking out collectively when the CCP is confronted with international controversies. It also helps to advance Beijing's views on issues such as the reunification of Taiwan. Laura Harth, director of Safeguard Defenders, says she has seen more and more Chinese people harassed and dissidents threatened in recent years. She said, "It starts with a phone call. They may try to trick you into coming back by threatening your relatives in China. If that doesn't work, they will send secret agents from Beijing to lure you back to China." Citing official figures, the report said that between April 2021 and July 2022, 230,000 Chinese were forced to return to China by the Communist Party's police under the threat of jeopardizing their children's schooling and family members' jobs. According to the Safeguard Defenders report, in addition to formal bilateral agreements for extradition and deportation, the CCP's main methods include refusing to renew passports, abusing Interpol red notices, and also intimidating and prohibiting the target's family members living in China from leaving China. Also, the CCP sends public security officers, agents, or non-government members overseas to force targets to return to China by directly or indirectly harassing their friends, family members, or co-workers overseas. In more extreme cases, the report added that the CCP carries out kidnappings which Beijing describes as unconventional methods. The report notes that they conduct covert operations with the police of the host country or lure the target to a third country where he or she can be extradited. The CCP has carried out 80 attempted kidnappings, about half of which were successful. One Chinese man who has been threatened and may have had an attempt on his life is 65-year-old Ge Bidong. He was a former researcher at the Shanghai Institute for Economic Development. Since moving to the US in 2018, he has been committed to the democracy movement. When he made online comments criticizing the Chinese government, he received thousands of unspecified phone calls from China within a week. Some of those calls included threats to harm his family in China. In April 2020, a man left a message on his Facebook page that he would have him killed. A few days later, his car suddenly and inexplicably caught fire on Highway 57 in California, and he almost died in the accident. On June 30th of the same year, he was in Colorado when a 50-ton UPS truck attempted to attack and collide with the sedan he was driving in a very frightening situation. He later found out that the big truck belonged to a Chinese company in California and that the Chinese company was less than 5 kilometers from where he lived. I'm thinking it was attempted murder. On June 30th, the same day, a guy on my Facebook page posted a picture of a police officer responding to a rollover scene. He had a message that said, I didn't know such a serious accident happened to you. Rest in peace. In retrospect, the two events are totally related. He also said, even when I moved overseas, the CCP has never seemed to let me go. I thought I could get away from all this harassment by moving to the US. I've been under a lot of attack from the CCP over the years because of the Zhangyan campaign, so it's very probable that the CCP is targeting me. Some of them have even become American citizens. It's a typical Trojan horse tactic. They exploit the American system of freedom and democracy to attack America. They exploit the freedom and democracy in America to defend their so-called pro-CCP activities. It's not that they really believe in the CCP. They only work for practical interests, playing the overseas thug role for the CCP. Wang Jingyu, who has lived in the Netherlands for many years, said he has been harassed by the CCP's overseas police stations for disclosing their evil deeds, prompting him to move around a lot to no avail. He said, the most recent one was last week when someone called the police in Holland and said that 2 kidnapped hostages were at my house and 2 people with guns were hired by me. The Dutch police then raided and searched my house, which affected my life a lot. The bomb threat, they impersonated me and sent emails saying that there were bombs and drugs in my house and that I was going to go to the International Court of Justice in The Hague to carry out a terrorist attack. I remember that the most serious one was on September 10th when the Dutch police sent about 10 police cars and helicopters to my apartment in the middle of the night together with a SWAT team. When the CCP saw that this tactic didn't work, it changed its tactics and booked a hotel in my name. The CCP agent pretended to be me, claiming a bomb had been installed in the hotel. He booked rooms in many European countries and threatened to carry out bomb attacks. At that time on that day, the police in Belgium, Germany, and Holland all wanted to arrest me. Moreover, Levi Broud, executive director of the Falun Dafa Information Center in the US, said in a media interview that the CCP has been directing agents to persecute Falun Gong practitioners in the US. They have exerted diplomatic and economic pressure by sending letters to countless mayors, governors, and lawmakers saying that they shouldn't support Falun Gong. If you do, you will lose economic and political benefits.
We have a Falun Gong practitioner who at the time was helping pioneer software so that people inside China could reach the free internet. He was in his home in suburban Atlanta. A couple of Asian men knocked on his door pretending to be delivery men for water, broke in, beat him up, wrapped him in a blanket, and took nothing from his home but computers. So that's one example. Another example here in New York City, actually. Some years ago, there was a huge mob that was organized to assault, verbally abuse, and sort of harass Falun Gong practitioners right there on the streets of New York City for many days. Later on, undercover investigators caught the New York consul general at the time, working in the consulate, saying that he actually went to Chinatown and encouraged these groups to go after Falun Gong, and he's the one who started it all.
The CCP's threats against Taiwan are also numerous, attempting to dominate overseas Chinese communities through various United Front tactics. Overseas Chinese Affairs Committee Chairman Xu Jiaqing also described how in April 2022, the Taiwan Chinese Language Learning Center in Paris, France was hacked, and the French police traced the attack back to the CCP's overseas police service station.
Speaking of the website and Facebook of the Overseas Chinese Language Learning Center, there was a hacking attack. We immediately asked the school to go through the procedure and report the case to the Paris police station. Then, based on the police investigation, they found out that the hacking came from some overseas police stations. That is the CCP service station that we just talked about. And this is the information that we have learned from the French police.
In addition to the U.S. launching action against the CCP's overseas police stations, on June 6, 2023, the U.K. started action as well. Its security minister said that the CCP had shut down all police service stations in the UK. He said, "These police service stations were set up without permission, and their presence, whatever their low-level administration activities, has led to a situation in which those leaving China and seeking safety and security in the UK feel uneasy and fearful. It's unacceptable." According to his statement, the Chinese Communist Embassy has responded swiftly by saying that all such stations have been permanently closed, and that if any further related allegations arise in the future, the British government will immediately launch an investigation in accordance with the law. In March 2023, the Canadian police announced that 2 Chinese service centers in Montreal were suspected of hosting CCP secret police stations. They intimidated and harassed Chinese targets in Canada, and an investigation had been launched. The RCMP also investigated the Vancouver-Wenzhou Association. Marco Mendocino, Canada's Minister of Public Safety, said, "All Chinese Communist secret police stations in Canada have been shut down. There may be more overseas police stations still operating in Canada, but the Canadian police have taken action to stop the Chinese Communist Party from using overseas police stations for foreign interference and will act decisively when new stations are discovered." Italy, where the CCP has set up the most stations, has also begun a comprehensive investigation and surveillance. It stated that it wouldn't rule out sanctioning the CCP for its illegal behavior in the country. The Dutch Foreign Ministry said that the CCP's police station in Rotterdam was illegal and should be closed immediately, while the Irish government directly ordered the closure of a Fuzhou station in Dublin. On December 19, 2022, the Foreign Ministry of the Japanese Liberal Democratic Party called for an investigation of the 2 stations in Japan and protested to the CCP through diplomatic channels. The Korean government has started mapping the police stations set up by the CCP in Korea as well. On November 7, 2022, Safeguard Defenders published an update saying that in the 2 months since its report was released in September, in addition to the US, 14 countries have already launched investigations. These countries include European countries such as Austria, the Czech Republic, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Portugal, Spain, Sweden, the Netherlands, and the UK, as well as Canada, Chile, and Nigeria.